My cousin Winslow stood in front of my late grandmother's entire art collection and told the estate lawyer that every single piece was his. 23 paintings, sketches, and sculptures worth over $800,000. Work that I'd created with my own hands over 15 years. Pieces I'd given to my grandmother because she was the only family member who believed in my talent. Winslow claimed I'd stolen them from him, that he was the real artist, that I was a fraud trying to cash in on her death. The lawyer believed him. My family believed him. Even the appraiser hesitated when Winslow produced forged documentation with his signature on pieces I'd signed myself. I walked out of that meeting with nothing, publicly humiliated, my artistic legacy erased. What Winslow didn't know, I documented everything. Every brushstroke, every work-in-progress photo, every dated sketch, every provenance record. And when he tried to sell my work at auction to pocket the money, I made sure the auction house knew exactly who the real artist was and what crime he'd committed. This is how I sent my cousin to prison and reclaimed every piece of art he tried to steal. My name is Stellan Voss, and for most of my life, I was the family disappointment. While my cousins went to law school and business school, I went to art school. While they bought houses and started families, I lived in a studio apartment painting 12 hours a day. My parents tolerated my career choice. My aunts and uncles openly mocked it. Family gatherings were exercises in humiliation, everyone comparing salaries and promotions while I explained, again, that no, I hadn't gotten a real job yet. The only person who understood was my grandmother, Miriam. She was a pianist who'd given up her career in the 1960s to raise a family. She'd spent 50 years watching her children and grandchildren chase conventional success, and she hated it. When I showed her my first serious painting at 19, she cried. "You have a gift, Stellan. Don't let them take it from you." From that day on, I gave her every major piece I created. Not sold, gave. She displayed them in her home like a private gallery. She was my patron, my champion, my only believer. Over 15 years, I gave her 23 works. Paintings, charcoal sketches, mixed media pieces, 2 small sculptures. My signature style, layered abstracts with hidden figurative elements. Each piece took months to complete. I signed every single one. Bottom right corner. Fuss with the year. Miriam loved them so much she had them professionally appraised for insurance purposes. Total value as of last year, $847,000. I was finally making it. Galleries were noticing. Collectors were buying my newer work. I was on the edge of real success. Then Miriam died. Miriam passed away in her sleep 3 months ago. Peaceful. Expected, she was 91. But it still destroyed me. She was the only family member I'd loved unconditionally. Her will was straightforward. Small cash bequests to her children and grandchildren. Her house split between her 2 daughters. And her art collection, all 23 pieces, left to me with a specific note. These belong to Stellan, their creator. He gave them to me out of love, and I returned them with pride. I cried reading that. Even in death, she was protecting me. The estate lawyer, an efficient man named Fergus, scheduled a meeting to transfer the collection. I showed up at Miriam's house ready to finally reclaim my work. That's when Winslow appeared. My cousin Winslow was 36, 2 years older than me, and had spent his entire life being the golden child. Yale Law, corporate attorney, 6-figure salary, perfect wife, 2 kids. He'd never shown any interest in art. Never attended one of my exhibitions. Never acknowledged my work existed. But he walked into that meeting with a folder full of documents and a lawyer of his own. "Before we proceed," Winslow said, "I need to contest the bequest of the art collection." Fergus frowned. "On what grounds?" "On the grounds that the collection isn't Stellan's work. It's mine." The room went silent. "I'm sorry, what?" I said. Winslow didn't look at me. He slid papers across the table to Fergus. "I'm an artist. Have been for years, privately. I created those pieces and gave them to our grandmother. Stellan has been claiming credit for my work for over a decade. This is artistic fraud, and I'm prepared to pursue legal action if necessary." I actually laughed. "You're insane. I created every single piece in that collection. My signature is on them. Your forged signature, Winslow corrected. I can prove I'm the original artist. He opened his folder. Inside were photographs of the paintings, my paintings, with documentation claiming he'd created them. Sketches that looked like preliminary studies. Dated notebooks with concept notes. Even a few photos of him posing with works in progress, though I immediately noticed they were photoshopped. The lighting was wrong, the proportions off. But it was convincing enough to create doubt. Fergus looked uncomfortable. Mr. Voss, do you have documentation proving you created these works? I have my signature on every piece. Which could have been added later, Winslow's lawyer interjected. My client has preparatory sketches, dated photographs, and testimony from family members who've seen him working on these pieces over the years. That's a lie. He's never created art in his life. Winslow finally looked at me. Stellan, I know this is hard, but you've been living in denial for years. You're talented at copying my style, but you're not the original artist. It's time to accept that. I wanted to hit him, wanted to scream, but I just sat there, frozen in disbelief. Fergus cleared his throat. Given the disputed ownership, I'm going to need to pause the transfer of the collection until this is resolved. Both parties should retain counsel. We'll reconvene once. No, I said. Those are my paintings. I created them. I'm not giving up my work because he's lying. Winslow shook his head sadly. Get help, Stellan. This obsession isn't healthy. He left. His lawyer left. And I sat in that room, shaking with rage, staring at Fergus. You don't actually believe him, I said. Fergus wouldn't meet my eyes. I have to remain neutral until ownership is established. I'm sorry. I called my parents that night, told them what happened, begged them to back me up. Stellan, my mother said carefully, Winslow is a respected attorney. Why would he lie? Because he wants the money. The collection is worth almost $1 million. But he's already wealthy. He doesn't need. Mom, I created those paintings. You've seen me paint. You know I'm an artist. Silence. We know you paint, sweetheart. But Winslow says he's been painting privately for years. And he has documentation. Maybe you both worked on them? Collaborated? I hung up. My uncle called the next day. Winslow's father. Threatened to sue me for defamation if I kept spreading lies about his son. My aunt, Miriam's daughter, said she remembered Winslow showing her sketches years ago. He was always so humble about his talent. One by one, my family closed ranks around Winslow, the successful lawyer with the perfect life. Of course he was telling the truth. I was just the struggling artist, desperate and delusional. Within a week, the narrative was set. Stellan had stolen credit for Winslow's work, and now that Miriam was dead, the truth was finally coming out. I lost family members I'd known my entire life. Cousins blocked me. Aunts refused my calls. My parents suggested I seek professional help. I was completely alone. Except I wasn't wrong. And I wasn't going to let him win. I hired a lawyer. A sharp woman named Octavia who specialized in art fraud and intellectual property. I brought her everything. My sketchbooks dating back 15 years. Photographs of works in progress. Dozens of them, showing the paintings in various stages of completion in my studio. Time-stamped digital files. Receipts for art supplies matching the materials used in the pieces. Emails with Miriam discussing the works. Exhibition catalogs from galleries that had featured my other pieces in the same style. Octavia reviewed it all carefully. This is solid. You can prove you created these works. But here's the problem. Winslow has documentation too. Forged, obviously, but convincing enough to create reasonable doubt. This is going to come down to expert analysis and credibility. How do we win? We need to prove he's lying. Catch him in a contradiction. Show that his documentation is fabricated. Make him look so dishonest that no one can believe him. How long will that take? Months, maybe a year. Art fraud cases are slow. I nodded. What if he tries to sell the paintings before then? He can't. The collection is frozen pending the estate dispute. He'd need a court order to. My phone rang. Fergus, the estate lawyer. Mr. Voss, I wanted to inform you that Mr. Winslow has petitioned the court for early release of the art collection. He's arguing that keeping the works in storage is causing them to deteriorate and depreciate in value. The judge granted a hearing for next week. I looked at Octavia. She closed her eyes. He's going to try to sell them, I said. Probably. Once they're sold to third-party buyers, recovering them becomes exponentially harder. Winslow was moving fast. He knew if he could liquidate the collection before I proved fraud, he'd walk away with the money and I'd be left fighting a losing battle. I had 1 week. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about Winslow's documentation. The photos of him with the paintings. The sketches. The notebooks. Something was wrong with them. I'd noticed it during the meeting but couldn't articulate it. I went back through my own archives. Found photos of the same paintings in my studio. Compared them to the photos Winslow had submitted. And I saw it. In one of Winslow's photos, he was standing next to a painting called Convergence, a large abstract I'd completed in 2019. In the photo, the painting was finished. But the photo was dated 2018. Impossible. I had dated photos showing Convergence, in progress throughout 2019. It didn't exist in 2018. He'd backdated the photo. Probably took it recently and manipulated the metadata. I found 3 more inconsistencies. Paintings he claimed to have completed in years they provably didn't exist. Sketches that showed details I'd only added in final versions, meaning they couldn't have been preparatory studies. He'd fabricated everything. But he'd done it sloppily. I brought it to Octavia. She smiled for the first time since I'd hired her. This is good. We can use this. But we need more. One metadata inconsistency won't destroy his case. We need something irrefutable. I thought about it. What if we make him prove he's an artist? What do you mean? If he's been painting for years, he should be able to paint now. In front of witnesses. We ask the judge to order a demonstration. He recreates a piece in his style. If he can't, it proves he's a fraud. Octavia considered it. Courts don't usually order creative demonstrations. But given the unusual nature of this case, it might work. I'll file the motion. 2 days before the hearing, the judge granted it. Winslow would be required to create a small original work in the same style as the disputed collection. He'd have 4 hours, supervised, with materials provided by the court. When Octavia called to tell me, I could hear the panic in Winslow's lawyer's voice in the background. The courtroom was small. Just the judge, the lawyers, Fergus, me, Winslow, and a court-appointed art expert who'd evaluate the demonstration. The judge explained the process. Winslow would be given a canvas, paints, and brushes. He'd have 4 hours to create an original piece in the style of the disputed collection. The expert would assess whether the work demonstrated the same technical skill and artistic voice. Winslow looked calm. Too calm. Like he'd prepared for this. They set him up at a table with the materials. Started the clock. For the first 30 minutes, he painted confidently. Basic shapes, color blocking, confident brushstrokes. I watched carefully. He was mimicking my style, but superficially, copying the surface aesthetics without understanding the underlying structure. By hour 2, he was struggling. The composition was flat. The color relationships were wrong. He kept overworking areas, trying to fix mistakes, making them worse. By hour 3, he was sweating. The painting looked like a bad imitation. Derivative and amateurish. When time was called, he stepped back. The expert examined the work in silence. Then examined photographs of my paintings from the collection. Finally, she turned to the judge. Your Honor, the demonstration piece shows basic technical competence but lacks the sophistication and artistic vision present in the disputed works. The layering technique, color theory, and compositional complexity in the original pieces are significantly more advanced. In my professional opinion, these were not created by the same artist. Winslow's face went white. His lawyer stood. Your Honor, my client is nervous. The artificial time pressure and unfamiliar setting. Counsel, the judge interrupted, I've seen enough. Mr. Winslow, Did you create the 23 works in the disputed collection? Winslow looked at his lawyer. At me. At the expert's report. Yes. I created them. Then why can't you replicate your own style? It's been years since I painted seriously. I'm out of practice. Octavia stood. Your Honor, I'd like to submit evidence showing that several of Mr. Winslow's documentation photographs contain metadata inconsistencies proving they were backdated. Additionally, preliminary sketches he claims predate the finished works contain details that only appear in final versions, which is chronologically impossible. She handed the evidence to the judge. He reviewed it silently. Mr. Winslow, I'm going to ask you one more time. Did you create these paintings? Winslow's lawyer whispered urgently in his ear. Winslow shook his head. Your Honor, I'd like to request a continuance to... No, the judge said flatly. I'm ruling in favor of Mr. Stellan Voss. The collection will be released to him immediately. Furthermore, I'm referring this matter to the district attorney for investigation of fraud and perjury. Winslow stood up. This is insane. Those are my paintings. Sit down, Mr. Winslow, or I'll hold you in contempt. He sat. The judge looked at me. Mr. Voss, I apologize for what you've been put through. Your grandmother's wishes will be honored. The DA's office moved quickly. They charged Winslow with fraud, perjury, and attempted theft. The evidence was overwhelming: forged documents, false testimony, metadata manipulation. His lawyer tried to negotiate a plea deal. The DA refused. They wanted to make an example of him. The trial lasted a week. I testified, showed my documentation, explained my creative process, brought in other artists who confirmed my style and technique. Winslow's defense was pathetic. He claimed he'd been confused about which paintings were his, that he'd genuinely believed he'd created them because we'd allegedly collaborated years ago. No one believed him. The jury deliberated 90 minutes. Guilty on all counts. Sentencing was 2 months later. The judge gave him 18 months in prison and ordered him to pay $200,000 in restitution, covering my legal fees, damages, and the cost of the estate dispute. I watched him get led away in handcuffs. His wife was crying. His father refused to look at me. I felt nothing but tired relief. I went to Miriam's house to collect my paintings. Fergus had arranged for professional art movers. I walked through her home one last time. Saw the empty walls where my work had hung. Remembered bringing each piece to her, seeing her face light up. She'd known this would happen. Known my family would doubt me. That's why she'd left that note in her will. She tried to protect me even after death. The movers carefully loaded each piece. 23 works. 15 years of my life. As they carried out the last painting, my mother appeared in the doorway. Stellan. I didn't respond. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I should have believed you. Yes. You should have. Winslow was always so convincing. So confident. We thought. You thought I was the failure. The struggling artist who'd lie for money. You've always thought that. She didn't deny it. Your grandmother was right about you, she said finally. You're stronger than all of us. I nodded. I know. I left without looking back. 6 months later, I did something Winslow had tried to do. I contacted Christie's. Told them I wanted to auction the collection. Not because I needed the money, though the exposure would help my career. I wanted to do it on my terms. As the artist. With full credit and provenance. Christie's was thrilled. They scheduled the auction for their contemporary art evening sale. Promoted it heavily, the Miriam Voss collection, works by Stellan Voss. The night of the auction, I attended in person. Wore a suit. Sat in the back. The auctioneer introduced the lot. Explained the backstory, the artist's grandmother, her faith in his talent, the recent legal battle that confirmed his authorship. The bidding started. My work sold for $1.2 million. 40% over the appraised value. I walked out of that auction house with a check for $960,000 after fees. More importantly, I walked out with my name, my real name, attached to my work. Winslow was in prison. My family was silent. And I was finally undeniably successful. A week after the auction, I received a letter from Winslow, forwarded from his prison. I almost threw it away. But curiosity won. Inside was a single page. Handwritten. Stellan, I know you won't forgive me. I don't expect you to. I just need you to understand why. I spent my whole life being the successful one. The one everyone admired. But I never created anything. Never built anything real. When Miriam died and I saw your collection, I realized you'd done something I never could. You'd made something beautiful. Something lasting. I wanted that. I wanted to be the artist instead of just the lawyer. I convinced myself I deserved it more than you. I was wrong. You earned this. I'm sorry. I read it twice. Then I burned it. Because apologies don't undo betrayal. And understanding someone's motives doesn't mean forgiving their actions. Winslow didn't steal from me because he was desperate. He stole because he was jealous. Because he couldn't stand watching the family failure succeed. But I did succeed. And he'll spend the rest of his life knowing he destroyed himself trying to take credit for what I built. Here's what I learned. People will always doubt you when success doesn't come from a traditional path. They'll mock your passion, dismiss your work, question your worth. And when you finally prove them wrong, some of them will try to steal what you've built instead of admitting they were wrong about you all along. Don't let them. Document everything. Protect your work. Trust yourself even when no one else does. Because the truth always surfaces. And when it does, the people who tried to erase you will be the ones forgotten. My grandmother believed in me when no one else did. She gave me the space to create and the courage to fight for what was mine. I won because she taught me that real artists don't just create beauty, they defend it. Winslow thought he could claim my legacy with forged documents and family influence. Instead, he's in prison, and my work hangs in collections around the world. Some victories aren't loud. They're not dramatic or instant. They're patient, methodical, built on evidence and truth. And when they finally arrive, they're devastating.